Hello, and welcome to this VCF9 preview demonstration. In this video, I'm going to show how to deploy a new virtual infrastructure workload domain from VCF Operations. We begin by logging into VCF Operations. We're navigating to the inventory. We see a list of the VCF instances that have been configured. In this example, we have a single VCF instance that currently has a single management domain. Selecting the VCF instance name, I see the option to add a new workload domain. Here I can either create a new workload domain using new infrastructure, or I can import an existing vCenter server instance and add that as a workload domain. In this example, we're going to create a new workload domain. So I begin by confirming the prerequisites have been met, and then providing the general information for the new domain. Here we're calling the domain WLD01. We will enable the vSphere supervisor as part of the domain creation. I'm going to assign a vCenter SSO domain name of WLD01.local and assign an associated password for that new SSO domain. I can then optionally specify whether I want to have VCF Operations automatically generate passwords or if I will assign my own passwords. Here I'm going to go ahead and assign my own passwords. Because I'm creating a new workload domain, I start by deploying a new vCenter server instance. Here I provided the fully qualified domain name for that vCenter server instance and assigned a new root password. I then provide a cluster name and an associated vSphere zone name. I then select the VLCM image that will be used for the cluster. Next, we move on to the NSX manager. With this new workload domain, we will be deploying a new instance of NSX, and we'll be deploying this in a standard topology, meaning there will be a single NSX manager node. So I provide the details for that new NSX manager node and assign the passwords. Note that here, because I'm configuring the vSphere supervisor, I have a note message here saying that it requires a centralized gateway, and this centralized gateway will need to be deployed after the workload domain has been created. Next, we move on to storage. In this example, we're going to use vSAN OSA. So I simply select the storage type. I'll specify the failures to tolerate and whether or not I want to use deduplication and compression. I then identify the host that will make up this workload domain. Here I have selected hosts 5, 6, and 7. Next, I configure the vSphere distributed switch. I then configure the vSphere supervisor. With the required inputs provided, I can now review my workload domain configuration, and when ready to deploy, click Finish. I'm notified that the workload domain creation has started, and in order to monitor the progress, I need to navigate to the Task section inside of VCF Operations. I can select the Create Workload Domain workflow and view the subtasks that make up the steps that are being performed to automate the creation of the workload domain. Here we see that the workload domain has been created. Note the warning. So as I mentioned earlier, because I chose to enable the vSphere supervisor as part of this domain creation, I need to set up an NSX edge cluster. That step needs to be done after the domain creation. So this warning is essentially just a reminder for me to go in and deploy that NSX edge cluster to finish the configuration for the vSphere supervisor. With the workload domain created, I can now open a new browser and connect to the vCenter server instance. Here we see our new workload domain that has been created using the 3 hosts that we specified, and we can see that our vSphere namespace has also been configured. We are now ready to deploy an NSX edge cluster for this domain in order to complete the supervisor configuration.